Welcome to Alumni Live, the podcast. These are conversations with Grand Valley State University film and video graduates about the industry, the film video major, and alumni profiles. Welcome to Alumni Live, the podcast, here with Brad Mead. Brad has been working in film and television editing in Los Angeles. How you doing, Brad?
I'm doing good.
Brad, you are doing
Hi.
some awesome stuff out there, but all that awesome stuff started when you were at Grand Valley. Can you tell us a little bit about being a student at Grand Valley, some of the courses you took, professors you had, what your experience at Grand Valley was like?
So I went to a different school when I was still kind of figuring things out. And I decided on Grand Valley after looking at a bunch of different universities because I felt their film program had the best program for what I wanted to do. I wanted to work in narrative filmmaking, and I felt that GV catered their program much more toward that than other schools in the area. So I transferred there, and I'd always really liked editing and was pretty sure that's what I wanted to do. I just kept editing and kept honing that skill. I became very solid in that is the path that I wanted to take. And so while I was there, everything I was doing was focused on how do I edit this project? How do I learn more about editing by doing that?
So what is it about editing that captured you? You know, the craft of editing, the art of editing.
A lot of people look at editing as a sort of tedious thing. And, you're sitting behind a computer for hours and hours looking at different takes of footage and looking at sort of the same thing over and over again. And I just really enjoy the process. It's very much like putting a puzzle together. When I was in school, you go through these classes and you learn how to do a lot of the other different disciplines. And I just found that editing was the one I always wanted to do. I tried directing, I tried doing camera work, and all those are fun in their own way, but editing is really where I felt like I wanted to be.
And that's like really interesting to me because I came into editing backwards, right? So if you would have asked me, when I was a sophomore, junior in college, I would have been like, editing is my least favorite thing. But then it's that same thing that you say where, I worked on my first professional documentary and I realized that like,
Mhm.
that's where the story happens. The puzzle happens there. That's where the building blocks become a structure, it becomes something
Yeah.
special.
You get to sit with the film in such a different way. When you're on set, it might take 5 hours to set up some crazy, insane shot. And then I look at it in the cutting room and go, well, I like the other one better. Yeah, you get to just work with the film in a much more, I guess, intimate way. But it's sort of like you've been given the canvas, you've been given all the paint and materials and brushes and everything, and now you're here to put it all together. Editing is so important for documentary because you have hours and hours of interviews and you really don't know what it's going to be until you start cutting it.
So you're there at Grand Valley, you're loving editing, people are giving you
Mhm.
footage, you're discovering the story. Graduation's coming up. What did your prospects look like? Where did you think you were going out of Grand Valley?
Well, so I knew that if I wanted to work in film and TV, I had to move to LA or New York. And New York is just a smaller and different market. There's definitely a film and TV community there, but 95% of all post production is done in LA. So for me, it was career focused. I really knew that I wanted to move to LA and that I basically had to do that to do this job. I saved up some money over the summer. I freelanced a little bit here and there, but I knew that there wasn't like nobody was going to hand me a job before I moved. I just had to get out there. The talent pool here is so big. Graduation was coming up and I sort of set like a deadline for myself. I'm going to move to LA in September and I'm going to do whatever I can this summer to make money and make that transition easier, but I'm just going to move out there and figure it out. One of my professors, Suzanne Zach, she had introduced me to this internship program called the ACE internship. ACE stands for American Cinema Editors. They are an honorary society for editors.
That's where like the big editors are all a part of. You want to talk about some of the editors that you're in company with there, some of the projects that have come out of ACE editors?
Pretty much any major movie, any of the large TV shows. If you're ever looking at the credits and you see after somebody's name, it says ACE, that means they're part of ACE. And basically anything that's got a big budget probably has an editor from ACE on it. They wanted a more formalized way to help train people so that they could have good, reliable assistants. But it also is a way to give people like me who are just fresh out of college the opportunity to get to break into a really difficult industry. It certainly has opened a lot of doors for me.
What are some of the projects that you're working on? Let's zoom into now real quick. How does this paid off for you?
So I was working at The Walking Dead for 3 years, and I've been working on a show for Apple TV Plus called Invasion. And that's what I've been working on most recently. Prior to that, I'd done feature films like It Chapter 2, Doctor Strange, a bunch of really cool things to have worked on. So yeah, being part of ACE or going through their internship program and getting connected to that network is totally how I got there. Some people spend years trying to just break into the narrative filmmaking world because it can be really tough. You have to network and you have to meet people, and that can be really hard if you don't know where to meet them. And so to have this sort of program that can just introduce you to these people, like that's the whole point of it, then that just opens the door immediately and totally catalyzes your whole career.
And in an industry where it is who you know, that really gives you the people to know, right?
It really is. I've sort of come full circle in that it really is about who you know. In order to get anywhere or get a job, you just need to know people. Everything is word of mouth. Normally, I find out about a job through a friend, through a coworker, through somebody. It's all personal connection based. Like if somebody hands me a resume and I don't know them and nobody I know knows them, it's a much lower chance that I'll hire them as opposed to somebody that I do know or have
Sure.
some kind of connection to.
So there you are. You're doing your ACE internship. You finished
Mhm.
the Grand Valley. You've got your sights set on a job. How are you navigating into your first position?
So through this internship, one of the other things that's really helpful is they give you a sort of roadmap for what you need to do and when you should be doing it by.
Can you share a little bit of
So
what was on that roadmap?
absolutely. The most important thing that you need to do to work in narrative TV and film at a higher level is you have to join the editors union. And the union is great for a million reasons that I'll talk about in a little bit. You have to join the union because it's a requirement for all of these shows that you be a union member. So the first thing they tell you is, okay, you have to go out and get your union accreditation. And the way that you do that for the editors union is to work 100 days on a non-union project, like a reality TV show or an indie film or documentary. They're usually lower budget. A lot of that is non-union work, and there's a lot of it being produced. So that's usually the most surefire way to go and get your days. So you have to get 100 days as an assistant editor, and you have to be paid at least minimum wage doing that. I went and found a job as a post PA at a reality TV company and then worked one TV show doing that and then got promoted on the next one being assistant editor so that I could start getting my union days and eventually join the union. So back to ACE's whole roadmap. Number one, join the union. And once you have your union days, you're able to take a union job. If you want to be a television editor, it's about 5 years of assistant editing. If you want to work in features, more like 10 years of assistant editing before you jump up to be an editor. With TV, you just produce a lot more content and your ability to move around and move up is just faster by nature. Whereas with features, you might be on a project for a year and a half. And so like in the amount of time that you do one movie, somebody could have done 2 shows, like 6 episodes of 2 shows or something like that.
And so then the importance of joining a union. Have you noticed a difference between union jobs and non-union jobs that you've done?
So I guess let me break down what is great about the union, aside from the fact that you have to join it. The thing that's really great about the union is that, like all labor unions, you have the ability to do collective bargaining. We basically just can't get totally taken advantage of by the studios and the different producers of projects. So our union sets sort of a minimum wage and it continuously goes up as the cost of living increase and things like that.
This is an industry where we're all excited to work on shows and we're super stoked about, like just
Yeah.
being in Hollywood. And so that
Mhm.
alone makes it really easy to take advantage of us, right? Like, oh, you can do this
Right,
for free.
right.
So the union like really protects us and makes sure that we're not
Exactly.
getting taken advantage of.
One of the things that's interesting about working in the film industry, especially for editors, is that you are hired as technically a full-time employee. You don't work for a company per se. You just work for the quote unquote company that was built that is the production. Every TV show and every movie, they set up a company specifically that will handle all the finances for that show. We have a freelance work style where you're working from job to job to job, but you are paid as a full-time employee. But because you're not working for the same company all the time, you can't get like healthcare through them or pension or things like that you would get at a normal job because you're bouncing around a lot. There's just no continuity. So what the union does is they will be your health insurance and your pension and things like that.
And that'll protect you from like working too many long hours back to back. It'll protect you from, some of the things that could be really hard on like an indie show or
Exactly.
regular life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's certain rules with the union, like you have what's called turnaround. They couldn't work you until 2 a.m. and then say you have to be back here at 6. They need to give you a certain amount of time off, and you're allowed to break that, but the financial penalty for it is so high that the shows are like, just give them a break.
All right. So you're out there working in the industry now, right?
Mhm.
You've done your first job, you've worked your way into the union, you're working as an assistant editor. What are you seeing in terms of like what is the culture like? How does it feel to be in this, elite club of editors out in Hollywood?
My favorite thing about working in editorial is that there's a really great culture of mentorship. The way that you move up in editorial is very much dependent on other people. You basically are dependent on somebody giving you a shot because the duties of an assistant editor and of an editor are all very, very different. It's one of those things like when you're doing it, you know that you can do the job above you, but you need someone else to trust that you can do it. And with a huge talent pool, you have to prove yourself that they should go with you and not somebody down the street who they also know can do it. The culture of mentorship is really great because everybody needed somebody else to give them a shot and everyone just pays it forward. So the post-production assistant is working for me and I really like them and they're doing a good job and they're interested and they want to be an editorial, then I show them this is what it's like to be an assistant and this is how you do things. So you just teach them because they're going to need to know that and you want to bring them up. And you do that because somebody else did that for you. And so it's really great because there's so much work in editorial that it's not very cutthroat. Everyone just wants to help each other out. I think editors by nature, they're all just really nice people. You kind of have to be because you deal with a lot of politics and a lot of big egos and you're working really closely with people. And so you have to be sort of a level-headed, relaxed person that can be trusted to just do the project and sort of like help collaborate with the director and the showrunner. Everybody's just very chill, laid back, and nice to be around.
Yeah, well, it could be too that the process of getting to that place filters out some of those people that are hard to work with because it is so who you know. And if you're known as the person
Yeah.
that's abrasive, you might not make it to the next level.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. If I work with someone and I don't like them, then I just don't hire them.
Sure.
So
Um,
yeah, it definitely does weed people out. Good personalities tend to stay.
yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about some of your mentors and, maybe some lessons you learned from them?
One of my mentors who I met through the ACE internship program is Sabrina Plisco. She was one of the editors on Doctor Strange. She's the person who gave me my shot for everything. I wasn't selected for the ACE internship, but I showed up to do a lot of the other events. And Sabrina saw that I, despite not getting the internship, that I was still wanting to be involved and still wanted to be there. She noticed that and sort of took me under her wing. So she's the one who brought me on to Doctor Strange. She said, "Hey, we need a post PA on this show. You should come do it. It's going to be really fun." And it was. It was a lot of fun. But just through being on a production that large, I learned a lot about how to operate on a huge team within an office, within that sort of environment. There's a lot that I learned from her about how to navigate political situations. So like if editors only had to edit, the job would be like twice as easy. But you do have to know how to navigate office politics, which is probably, true of any job, but especially in film and television, the things you're working on are so personal to people and also just cost millions of dollars. It's all really fun and we have this really fun, cool job, but at the end of the day, they're making money off of it. It's a product and you are with something that costs a lot of money to make. It's sort of difficult to put into words, but just by watching her, I learned a lot about how to sort of like exist in that world.
Hmm.
and what was sort of expected of me.
And I imagine part of
But
your job is adapting to that editor's system and following
exactly.
what they
Yeah.
need and how their brain works.
I mean, the whole job of being an assistant is you do basically everything so that your editor only needs to focus on editing. I sort of look at editorial as sort of like a bicycle wheel, and editorial is the hub of that wheel. So you've got sound mixing and visual effects and color and all these different processes that are all basing their work off of stuff that you are doing in the editing room. As an assistant, you're sort of the front door to that hub. So everything has to come through you before it gets to your editor. You're dealing with all of the different departments, you're liaising with them.
You're like organizing bins, labeling stuff, right? Is that so? Like, what does your like day look like? Does it start with somebody bringing you something?
So yeah, my day as an assistant, depending on what part of production we're in, it looks a little bit different. When we're at the beginning of a show and they're still shooting, my day is I come into work.
Oh, it is at an office. You're not working from home.
I mean, COVID sort of brought about this really big change in the industry. So it just kind of depends on the show's preference and what they want to do. Like when we work in an office, we have to get tested every week, and there's just a lot of money saving stuff for working from
Certainly.
home. There's a vendor who will sort of do the first steps for prepping your footage and call it dailies. They'll sync the footage and they'll put it in a format that is more friendly for us to work with. So we work on Avid. I would say 99% of all productions are Avid. A lot of indies will use Premiere. People who do trailers or things like that, they might use Premiere, but pretty much every job is on Avid. One of the things that is involved with working in Avid is that you use proxy media, which is really important, especially now because we're shooting with cameras that shoot 8K and the file sizes are massive. If we're putting together an hour-long TV show, you can't work with it that way. You have to work in a much like just a 1920 by 1080p format that is a lot more processor friendly. So anyway, the vendor will send us a digital package that we'll download, and I'll bring that footage into the Avid, which is our computers. We just call them Avids. Avid is the program, but it's also the name of the thing. It's some carryover term. But anyway, so I bring my footage into the Avid, and then I start prepping it for my editor. And like we discussed earlier, that's different based on who you're working with. Each scene gets its own bin, and I'll give my editor scenes as I finish prepping them. I'll assess the footage that I've gotten and think of the most efficient way for me to get it done, but to also make sure that my editor doesn't have downtime or minimize the amount of downtime they have. So I might give them a couple smaller scenes first that I can get done really quick because that'll buy me a little extra time to do a bigger scene. Or
Mm.
sometimes if the bigger scene is the more interesting one, I'll just say, hey, you're not going to have any footage for a minute, but I'm going to give you this big scene that'll keep you busy for a while.
We're taking a short break to tell you about the Dirk Koning Memorial Film and Video Scholarship. Here's Gretchen Vintage remembering Dirk Koning.
The Koning Scholarship enables students to get that kind of an education, to be a good filmmaker, to be able to express their voice, and to continue Dirk's dream.
For more information and to donate to the scholarship, visit the link in the description. Now back to the show. And so when you say you're
So
giving them a scene, are you just giving them bins, or did you lay stuff on a timeline for them?
it's a scene bin. I'm not laying anything into a timeline for him. He'll do all that because he's the editor. I prepped a bin in whatever way that he wants. And then I hand that bin over to him and say, here you go. You can go cut this now.
So, and prepping the
Um,
bin would be like labeling close-ups, labeling takes, things like that.
you don't have to do really a whole lot of labeling because a lot of that gets done for us. So the vendor that I was talking about, that they do the sort of first stages. When they bring the footage in, they transcode it. They also will rename those clips based on the production paperwork that we get. So every shot is going to have a name and a camera and all these things, and they'll name the clips like that so that we know what clip refers to what note in the paperwork. And so, yeah, it is more just putting it in a format that they prefer. So like if they shoot 3 cameras on a setup, I will group those cameras together so that the editor can shuffle through the cameras as they need to. And then I'll give that to him as a group, as opposed to giving him 3 individual cameras for the same setup. Once they're done cutting a scene, I'll take it back and do temp sound design work for it. So that's one of those tasks that has become more and more important with the advent of digital. A lot of older editors didn't have to do quite as much, but now we're sort of expected to do like a pretty full sound pass. And it kind of depends on what your bar is with your editor, like how much work you put into it. But my editor and I have a pretty high bar, and we tend to put stuff out that could be aired if it really needed to. And the whole reason for that is that it just makes our job easier. Like if we've got a big action scene and I do no sound effects for it, the cut might not play that well. Even if it's a brilliant cut, it just may not play because you need the sound work in it. The way that I approach sound work is my whole job is to help sell that cut.
So when you say you're selling the cut, who's on the other end of that? Who is approving it, or like who are you working with on the other end?
Directors, producers, showrunners, whoever's next in the pipeline. So the first thing we do, I guess, is we do an editor's cut. And that cut is very much based on like notes that we're given, but it is still the one that is our opinion of how it should be done. Once we have all the footage in for the show, we've cut everything, we've done sound effects and music and temp visual effects and things for it. We will then get into the note stages of my job. We send the cut out to first the director. They have some union amount of time. So like the directors have their union. Everybody in Hollywood has a union they belong to. The directors, they get in television, it's 4 days, and in film, it's 10 weeks, but that's their time to do their cut of the show. The director comes in and then they have their cut. So they look at the editor's cut. They just go through and give notes. Once the director's cut is finished, it moves on to the producers, which in TV would be the showrunner. In film, it would be the studio. You do the same process all over again. You just keep doing notes. So it goes, editor's cut, director's cut, producer's cut. And then after that, you lock it. But I'll send it out to our sound mixing team. I'll send it to our colorist team. Visual effects will take it and start tagging the shots that they need to do work to. I'll send it to our music team so the composer can do their work. And that's the easiest part of my job, because once it's delivered, I just kind of have to like sit back and wait for the product to come. But in TV, usually you're on to the next episode at that point. Like you lock an episode and then you just start working on the next one. So we're always busy.
Yeah, yeah. And so then all of a sudden, the thing's done, they send it to the theater, time for your next job. So how do you find your next job?
Yeah. A lot of times, if you are working really well with the crew that you're with and you all like each other and you want to keep working together, you will just keep working with them. Somebody will find a job or somebody will have a lead on something. And like a lot of people will just kind of like stick with the same group. A lot of times as an assistant, if you want to keep working with the same editor, you just wait for them to find a job. And sometimes that can be hard because you might work with an editor who wants to take some time off and maybe you don't want to take as much time off as them, or maybe you want to do something different. If you don't want to work with that person or you want to go work on something different, then you have to like network around a bit and see what's out there and available. If I want to keep assisting the editor I'm with, I just wait for them to get a job. But a lot of editors, once they've established themselves, will get an agent. And agents are funny because they take 10% of your paycheck and they don't really do a lot most of the time. Agents are extremely valuable in the sense that they will get you work. And so they're absolutely worth the money in that sense. And they also will negotiate your rate for you, even though they're taking 10% of your paycheck. They're kind of paying for it by getting you more money when they're negotiating your rate. So they're worth it. I mean, with any job, you're first starting out, it can be really difficult to find work. And that's when you have to sort of network around the most. I found also when you're transitioning to the next step up, that's also when you have to network around a lot. I was able to get a job as an assistant editor because I got bumped up on a show that had hired me as a PA and they needed an assistant. But after that, I only had one credit. And so it can be a little bit more challenging to find work. But like now I could work on anything I want basically, because I have enough credits and enough big credits that it was more a matter of like, what do I want to work on? What do I want to go and do? So I'm at this point in my career now where I'm about to try and become an editor. And I've got a couple shared editing credits that will give me enough lines on my resume that someone might trust me with a smaller show. But right now I need to like network. So I need to go around and talk to people and say, hey, like, do you know of anything? Like, have you heard of anything? Here's my resume. You just got to make friends with people and you build your network by doing jobs. And it's one of those things that your network starts small because you've only done one job, but because the nature of the industry is working job to job to job, you meet new people at every job and your network grows. And as long as you are just nice and good to work with and you're good at your job, people want to keep working with you. So yeah, it's really tough at first because you don't have a network yet. And it's really tough to network when you don't have a network, but you just got to get that first job and then you kind of go from there. But I guess for students that are looking to work in editorial, you first would network with alumni. If you want to work in film and TV, you hit someone like me up and you say, hey, I'm interested in moving to LA and I want to work in film and TV and editorial. And could I chat with you for a little bit?
Yeah. Have you done that yourself where you found an alumni out there and networked with?
When I first moved here, I had networked with an alumni, Mary Graff Ashley. She was editing on the behind the scenes features for the third Hobbit movie. I messaged her and said, hey, I would love to grab some coffee with you or something and just meet up. And so she was working on this project and she was like, hey, we're actually looking for post-production coordinator and we're looking to hire somebody green, which the subtext of that is we just don't want to pay somebody. So she said, hey, send me your resume and I'll pass it along and we'll see if they want to interview you or something. And that's just how it happens.
Were there any
We
like
s-
assignments that helped you like navigate that? One of our previous episode, we talked about informational interviews. Was that ever something you
Yeah,
did?
I did. I think just an informational interview over email with an editor. And I really don't remember much about it.
No, that's
That
fine. I
was
mean, it
like,
sounds like the
that
kind of the
was,
message of this whole thing is like, be good to people and like they'll be good to you, right? Like you're out there
uh,
making good inroads with people and like the jobs will happen. It sounds like.
yeah, paying it forward is just a big part of working in editorial. Like I said before, someone helped me out, so I am then going to help someone else. And so, yeah, before you leave or when you first get there, just message people, email them, say, hey, I've got your contact info from a professor or however they got it,
Yeah.
and just offer to buy them coffee. And so,
Not necessarily like give me a job, but you're like making like real connections, like you're making friends out there. Were there things at Grand Valley that you felt prepared you for the work that you do now? Classwork wise, or, are there lessons that you learned back in the day that you are putting to use today?
one of the things that I felt is that it does a decent job of preparing you for the job you will eventually do. I think what would have been really helpful is to have some class time dedicated to doing the sort of assistant roles that I was going to do for nearly a decade before I got there. It gave me the chance to make mistakes and learn about what I wanted to do. So I wanted to be an editor and I had at Grand Valley the opportunity to edit a bunch of things and sort of make sure that that's what I wanted to do, that it wasn't working in sound or working in camera or directing or something, that it really was editing is what I want to do. And now go do everything to get there. The main thing that I think was really valuable about school there was having the time and the space to just make mistakes and to learn from stuff like that in a safe setting as opposed to doing it in the real world and messing up my job or my
Sure.
career path or something.
So a student listening to this right now, they're in between classes, getting ready for some schoolwork. What would you advise them to do like right now? What are some things they should practice or prepare for?
So any students that want to work in editing, the first thing that you should do is learn Avid because you're probably going to end up working on it. You can cut in Premiere if you want to. It might be easier, but I took it upon myself to cut both of the thesis films I worked on in Avid. I didn't know how to use Avid, but I wanted to take that opportunity to learn it because it's a lot easier to learn something when you have a project that you're trying to do with it, as opposed to just going in completely dry and having no idea what you're doing. So learning Avid, take the chance to do that. You're not going to know a lot of how to work on it in a professional sense until you start working professionally. But having the foundation of knowing at least how the program operates and how to work within it would be really, really helpful for students that want to edit. And also try to just cut as much stuff as you can in any of your class projects. Try to be the editor. If other people want to edit, obviously don't hog it, but definitely cut as much as you can. I was lucky enough to find a job on campus at the Office of Student Life where I was editing. So I got a lot of experience doing that. And then if you're serious about moving to LA, reach out to alumni and you can do a Zoom chat with them. You can trade emails, but sort of start just getting feelers about what it's like to live here, what it's like to find work here, things like that. And if you're a student and you're about to graduate and you're sort of trying to figure out what, like you want to go to LA, but you don't really know what to do, just set goals for yourself. Make a budget, give yourself a timeline, just like make a plan.
What are you looking at
Mm-hmm.
doing the next, couple of years? What do you got your sights set on? What do you want to be doing?
The end goal for me is editor. And it's kind of funny because when you're going through it and when you're climbing the ladder, there's this sort of immediacy to it. And you really you're just trying as hard as you can. You want to get there fast. And then you get to editor and that's it. There's no head editor or number one editor on the team, stuff like that. It's
Sure.
just,
But there are
that's
different
head.
projects and bigger projects, more personal projects, right? Like
Of course, absolutely. Of
that's
course.
the main navigation there.
Yeah, you can be on the project as opposed to the position.
And as you're
Um,
climbing that ladder and trying to find, the right projects and, I imagine putting a little extra in, how do you find that balance between, still having fun in your off work life?
yeah. Well, see, that's the one major drawback to working in film and television. It's not quite as bad in editorial because we don't have the same demands that production has, but it's a very, very time demanding job. You will spend a lot of long nights working, but it's really fun. And if you're working with a good crew, you oftentimes don't really mind it. But finding the balance, that's the question that we're all constantly asking ourselves. How do we possibly make this happen? Especially like when you start wanting to have kids and, life just starts happening. You have more things you want to do with your time. And it's easier the higher up the ladder you get. You have a little bit more ability to call shots or make asks. But it's really tough as an assistant because you're in a support role. And oftentimes we aren't covered very well in terms of like, if I get sick or if I want to go on vacation or something, there's no other me. I don't work in a department or have the work covered by someone else. It's like, here's the thing we have to do and we have to do it right now. The whole job is very immediate in that sense. So it's really challenging to take time off or find the time. It's just up to the person to be sort of setting the boundary. Sometimes you just have to work late because something has to get done, but that's true of any job. If you have something important coming up, as long as you let people know and figure out a way to cover yourself, then it's totally fine.
I like to, give you an opportunity to brag about something you're really proud of. Tell us about a problem that
Okay.
you helped solve. What is a scenario where you got to swoop in and be the hero in your job?
So I was working on this movie, Mile 22, which was a Mark Wahlberg action movie. And we're in the middle of the final mix. Everyone's really stressed out. Nobody has time to do anything. And we really need to get Mark Wahlberg on an ADR stage so that we can record a line for him. We couldn't get him. He just didn't have time to get to a stage to do these lines for us. I have a little microphone that I attached to my iPhone, which is something that I use for doing temp ADR lines that we'll add into the show just to see if it works. So they sent me to the director's boxing gym where Mark was doing some other show or something there. And they said, you're just going to go into a back office and get it done. Cause like, you can't make it to a stage and we're all on the mixed stage right now. And like, no one else is here. So you gotta go do this. I had to go in and like walk in very direct and with a purpose and say like, I'm here for Mark and I'm here. Where's Mark? I need to go get a line from right now. I'm working on the movie. And everyone's like, oh, yes, this way. So I had him read the line. He looked back to me and I was like, do it again, but a little bit faster. And so he did it. Like he just, he's totally professional and we got what we needed. And so I took that file off my phone to the sound stage and we got the line.
Hey, that's how movies are made, huh?
Exactly. Sometimes just by the seat of your pants.
Right. Well, Brad Mead, thank you so much for teaching us about your career in editing
Of
and
course.
narrative TV and broadcast. And keep up the great work and we'll see you on the big screen, huh?
Yeah, hopefully someday.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Alumni Live, the podcast. Subscribe to our podcast to hear more from our alumni across the industry. Check out Alumni Live on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube for more conversations and networking. Let us know what topics you want to hear our alumni talk about. The Grand Valley State University Film Video Alumni Network is here for you, and we're glad that you're here.